My name is JD Rinker. My parent is Amanda Johnson, and my grandparents was Donna and Gary Chambers. I'm here with Thomas Williams. He's been fishing for a while, and we're trying to talk to him, have an interview about how he thinks climate change is affecting the wildlife.
My name's Thomas Williams. I'm a Tulalip tribal member. I'm 34. My earliest memory of fishing is around 8 years old. I work as a Lushootseed language teacher. I've currently served on the Fish Commission for 6 years, and I used to work with the Youth Council as a Youth Council advisor. I'm currently a language teacher right now, though, so I'm here to do an interview with my nephew, JD.
I'll ask you questions, but we're trying to figure out how fishing was compared to when you're young to now.
I think the first thing that I think about is kind of like the style of fishing. So my grandpa, Herman Williams Sr., loved Shieldhead 1. When I was around 8 to 10 years old, I started going out on the round haul boat with them. And we would get up really, really early in the morning, be out on the water around 4:30, 5 o'clock. And we did that every single day, Monday through Friday. And we was a round haul crew. There was my grandpa, my dad, Andy Williams Sr., Wake Wadab, and my brother, Junior, Wake Wadab 2, and myself and my cousin, Brandon Corallo. And we was a crew, and along with Bernie Gobin, Kai Kai, he had a boat that would fish right outside there on the mouth of the bay. We would go out over towards Myers and the pools in there, and our cousin Lance Williams, my grandpa's nephew, he'd be out there round hauling too. The style of fishing was different then. We would be scooping up fish, catching large numbers at a time. There were years where there wouldn't be any fish. Even back then when I was younger, I didn't quite comprehend maybe what was going on. I just thought, oh, maybe sometimes fish don't come back. It wasn't until I started fishing with my brother, Lucas, in around 2009 and 2010, and we was doing a lot of chum fishing in the bay then. We were kind of out of the round haul game. We all grew up and went different ways for many years. And when we came back to the water, we were set netting. And when we came back, the first fisheries that we started doing in the bay was chum. And that year ended up being a record-breaking year of the amount of fish that came back, the amount of egg take that was taken by the hatchery so that we could reproduce for the next seasons to come. And there was a couple good years after that. I'd say until 2013, the chum salmon fisheries completely crashed. We really started having to brood stock in the bay heavily, which brood stocking is when we take fish in and we have our hatchery here. We get the females and the males ready for their spawning that they do, usually naturally, and we assist them. So that's our brood stocking process. The numbers have definitely dwindled down. None of us have tied it to climate change. All of those things really started to take place when I first got on the Fish Commission. What the Fish Commission does is we set the fisheries for the Tulalip fishermen to be sure that we're going to not over-harvest and that we're going to have enough fish to come back and to spawn for future generations for the next seasons to come. While I was on the committee, there's a process called PFMC, and that is where the tribes and our natural resources directors and the fish committees, they all meet with the Northwest Indian Fish Commission. And that's really where climate change started to become a factor into how I fished and how I thought about fishing. My first year that I had gone to that process, I thought that commercial fishing had become like a really bad word in my mind, because if you take in what climate change is doing, so if climate change is dwindling down the salmon's ability to survive in the ocean, and then we all expect them to come back, and we have this high expectation on them in the form of a commercial fisheries, really what we do is we're putting pressure on a fisheries that the climate's already having much resistance sustaining. The only reason why I say that commercial word really became a bad word in my mind is because we're a treaty fisheries and we have a right to ceremonial and subsistence, okay? So the Article 5 of the treaty means that we have rights to our usual and accustomed places to hunt, fish, and gather, okay? But the tribes do everything they can to manage the resources. And a lot of the times we don't get the state to, walk side by side with us on that. So when we take climate change and put that into consideration, me going into the future, I think about our intake of the resource, and what it looks like when you're really looking out for the next 7 generations going into, you've seen the summer that we had this year, started out pretty good, and then we had that 2 days of heat, and now we're in what seems to be, early fall weather, and what that's done for our fisheries this year is now we have king salmon running, right? And king salmon is one of the killer whale's main source of food. It's not its only source of food, but it's its main source of food. The Tulalip tribe has a huge relationship with the killer whale, called Kalahech.
I heard you talking about the orcas and how that's the king salmon is their main source of food. Do you think, just beyond climate change, do you think there's other ways we can help, like seals or whatever, how they eat salmon too, that's one of their main sources? Do you think there's anything else other than climate change that's affecting us in fish runs?
They've been here. If I was to take climate change out of the picture and what's affecting salmon and what's affecting our ability to take salmon, they would be like number 2 next to climate change, because they're just overpopulated. It's not like it's their fault that they live in the water. It's not their fault they like to eat salmon. There's acts through Congress that prohibit certain taking of them because people have been real nasty about it in the past, like there's been a commercial fisheries on them. But tribes have always reserved the right to maintain their catch. Like, so if I got a net out, I got a right to protect my gear from that seal ripping it up or ripping my salmon out of it. It's an interesting thing when you think about the seals, because they take a lot of fish, and on a year where climate change is affecting us and we are shut down for efforts of trying to brood stock and to put more salmon out there to help out killer whale, we're closed, but nobody closed down the seals. So fish are still being eaten. Important fish right now are still being eaten, going against our efforts of trying to, not fish to brood stock these fish, right?
We were also talking about this next generations to come. What do you think it would look like for the next 7 generations? How do you think the salmon population will change? Do you think it'll get better or worse?
I think if we stick to our style of intake, not just Tulalip, but all tribes, I think that it's going to get worse only because of the style. We're very aggressive. We're very efficient, and we have the means to wipe out a fisheries just by wanting to, make a couple bucks here and there. But it doesn't have to be that way, because, the tribes are the ones who reserve the right to fish, and the tribes are the ones who have the right to bargain. So whether we're a commercial fisheries or whether we're a subsistence and ceremonial, we'll always have the right and the ability to make a living off the water, whether it's salmon, crab, gooey duck, whatever. But if that resource ain't there, it don't matter what rights we have, because a right's nothing if we don't have the ability to utilize it, right? We're not just gonna set a net to ghost fish. We don't wanna go to the Hebalb to look at what it was like to fish. We wanna be able to fish in the future generations. You're asking what I think about the next 7 generations. That's a lot of families out. That's a lot of people to come. And if we don't have everybody on board wanting to do the work, you know, in my view, the tribes do 95% of the work in trying to manage these fisheries and the efforts of, you know, the covert dams, taking dams down. I mean, all these efforts are coming from the tribes, you know, hatchery production, you know, to keep fish. If the tribes didn't have, there's one more state hatchery left, and the tribes are managing everything else. If it wasn't for hatcheries, there already wouldn't be any fish left to fish. So the thing right now is the game that we're in now is in hatcheries. But the tribes in effort, the Tulalip tribes in effort to have a future generation of fishermen, is every single year the tribe puts out, you know, on average, and let's just talk about kings. The hatchery puts out 1.6 million fish, right? They're these little fries, and they're caught, they're counted, they calculate the number, and those fish go to the ocean. And then you take everything that we talked about into consideration with the food, with the competition. We get 5,000 fish to come back. So out of 1.6 million fish actually counted go to the ocean, and 5,000 come back. 3,000 are caught because 2,000 get eaten by the seals. When you really start to want to put it into perspective, what the climate could actually be doing. In 2009 and 2010, 1 million chum came back. If the ocean was healthy, if the Puget Sound was healthy, we'd put 1.6 million fish out there. There'd be a certain amount of birds would eat them. A certain amount would naturally die. Seals would eat some. But shoot, you put 1.6 million out. I mean, I think after everything that happens to them naturally in the ocean, we'd still get 1 million to come back. I think it's sporadic, but for the next 7 generations, the only thing that I could say that you guys got going for you is that you're talking about climate change. You know, you're going to the right people. You want to talk to natural resources. You want to talk to fishermen. You know, all these things are going to create a dialogue, because right now, if we just all go home and wait for what bonus is going to be like because we know we get a nice bonus coming, then that's all we're going to worry about. But if we got people like you and the youth trying to organize and trying to, you know, do these interviews like this, then I think you might be able to wake up at least a couple people, because you know what, not everybody's going to want to run around in this tribe just because we're tribal members and fight for salmon, right? But if you put a message out there to 500 people and you get 5 of you guys who want to fight, well, that's better than where you started, right? So keep doing what you're doing, keep asking questions, but we can't go any less than 7 generations. You know, we don't want to go, oh well, I mean I'll just look out for 5. You know, it's like we can't get into that mentality. So
to go on more in depth of what you just talked about, what do you think people around the Pacific Northwest can help with climate change?
Just be realistic and to allow science and data and facts to be first our guiding factor. I mean, first and foremost. We could all have opinions on things, but science and facts and data should definitely be the guiding factor. But what that makes me think about is how we ban plastic all over the world, right? And plastic's really bad. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and argue that plastic isn't terrorizing the ocean or terrorizing species, right? Plastic doesn't affect salmon like humans do. Plastic doesn't even make up for a full 1% of marine mammal deaths. Commercial fisheries makes up for 50% of all marine mammal deaths. I'm talking turtles, sharks, and so on and so on. And when I say commercial fisheries is making up for 50% of the deaths, I'm not talking about tribal commercial fisheries. You know, there are big things that go on out in the ocean. Seattle with their purse seiners, has a big part of it. In all the states along the coast, they all have these impacts that plastic could never have. One thing that I learned about just brakes, our brake pads in our car have copper in it, right? Every time we all drive and hit our brakes, little pieces of copper going all over the ground, right? And then it rains. And they call it a flash flood because everything flushes straight to the water, right? All that copper goes into the sound. You know, everywhere on the shore, some house, some beautiful looking home, someone's living real nice, but all of their poop goes right into the water. Every time they flush, it just goes right into the water. Humans, it's like anything that's convenient is generally bad for the environment. Anything that's convenient.
Well, thank you for being out here and helping us and say what you think about climate change. And
humans are the leading cause of climate change. That's my statement.